Welcome to Being Intrepid, where we share practical insights from leaders who are shaping the future of talent and learning. I'm your host, Sam Herring. Over the past 2 decades, I've built companies that help people learn and organizations thrive. In a world of accelerating change, building a skilled workforce is a top CEO priority. But for talent and learning leaders, delivering on that promise is easier said than done. And frankly, the talent and learning profession has made it a lot harder than it needs to be. The skills conversation is cluttered with jargon. We hear about strategies, taxonomies, ontologies, skills based organizations, alongside endless debates about what even counts as a skill versus a task, a competency, an experience, and so on. The result is that skills are often seen as an abstract HR exercise instead of a core business capability. So, how do learning leaders stay focused on the real mission, delivering a skilled workforce that delivers business results? In this episode, I'm joined by skills expert Craig Friedman for a clear, practical conversation on what a skills strategy actually is, what problems it solves, how to get started without boiling the ocean, and of course, how Gen AI fits into the picture. Craig brings decades of experience from Accenture, Deloitte, and St. Charles Consulting Group, where he is the talent and skills transformation leader. He's also the author of the recently published book, Enterprise Skills Unlocked. So let's get started. Craig, welcome to Being Intrepid.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
Great to have you here. So, Craig, you've got decades of experience in human capital consulting and technology. I'm really curious, what inspired you to write your book? And particularly, why now? Why is this topic so important right now?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's probably been through 3, 4, maybe 5 years since we started getting questions from clients about this idea of skills-based organizations, skills-based talent practices. Started getting a lot of conversations about it. I noticed there was a lot of confusion, sort of a lot of
Mm,
basic questions. Uh, you might think of it as sort of the skills curious phase, right? Trying to
mm,
understand it a little bit better. And there seemed to be a lot of misconceptions. So I started blogging about the topic, is where it first started, just to try to sort of get some basic ideas out there through LinkedIn and such. And that started to generate more conversations. And I started to notice that there wasn't a lot being written sort of publicly that really got into the details of how you do this. There was
yeah.
a lot of sort of marketing level material that was
Hmm.
so the benefits of and the trend and the coming trend of and the technology that's coming out to support it. But there wasn't a lot of sort of roll up your sleeve, step one, step two. What do you have to do to execute this? What are the key decisions you made? So
Yeah.
we started shifting the blogs in that direction, and then over time we
Okay.
started collecting the blogs into sort of the first draft of a book, which then went through a few cycles and became the book as it is today.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. I mean, I sense a lot of execs get curious, like you said, are kind of skills curious, but I also get a sense they get overwhelmed, like with where do I start? Do I have to like go enterprise with skills? What domain within human capital do I start with? Um, so I'm hoping this conversation today really, like your series of blogs, demystifies the conversation so that learning and talent leaders, understand the value and really understand how to get started on a practical level. So maybe on a real basic level, since we're talking basics here, tell us what skills-based talent strategies are, and maybe give us a practical example or two of a skills-based learning strategy, since we primarily are communicating with learning leaders on this podcast.
Yeah. Well, I would say a skills-based talent strategy is sort of any talent strategy that is leveraging skills data, enterprise skills data,
Okay.
to create more targeted, more flexible, more efficient talent solutions, right? Because fundamentally, this whole thing about skills-based talent is sort of a data transformation, right? It's
Hmm.
data-driven
Hmm.
HR transformation. We're building a layer of data underneath all our HR systems that are focused on the skills, and not just the skills of people, but skills as tied to job descriptions, tied to work tasks, tied to long-term workforce plans, sort of underneath the whole talent value chain, right? And so that data actually enables us to deliver much more, sometimes efficient, sometimes targeted, sometimes more flexible um, kinds of talent solutions. I mean, in terms of examples from an L&D perspective, there's a whole bunch of things, right? So one thing could be leveraging a talent marketplace with developmental gigs, so that
Hmm.
where you're using learning on the job in a targeted and specific way to develop people.
Yep.
So that's typically called an opportunity marketplace.
Hmm.
Um, so that's sort of a using a talent marketplace for internal development. Um, if you tie skills to your job architecture so that you have clearly defined skills associated with every job description, um, and you make that public, then people can look up any job in the company and figure out the gap between their current skills and the skills for that job. So it starts to
Hmm.
support career mobility
Hmm.
because the system can create an instant pathway between any two points in the organization, right? And that's
Right.
pretty dramatic. I mean, learning teams today would have a really tough time if you gave. I was a L&D, manager and director for many years. If you asked me to point a path between this job and every other box in the company, like my head would have exploded, right? But now you
Right.
can do it
Right.
automatically. Just between that and me, here's a unique learning pathway for you.
Yeah.
Um, and those pathways with these skill-based systems, not just learning options, right? They could tee up developmental gigs. They could help you find experts in that skill. They can help you find a community of practice that's tagged with that skill interest. So you can get sort of a multi-channel
Yeah.
development plot from any one place to any another. Um, a third one that we see a lot is this notion of like if you're a staffing person and you're looking for someone to staff a project, you
Mm.
can't find someone who's a perfect fit because there's something unique
Yeah.
about this project, but you can look on adjacent skills and find the closest match. And
Yeah.
then the system can automatically tee up the gap between that person's skill set and what the project needs and have sort of real time, just in time onboarding
Right.
from an L&D perspective. And again, that's not an additional separate task. It's not like you have to tag someone on the project team to do project onboarding. You're getting this, from the system automatically. As soon as you get the staffing, it identifies the gap and says, here's some preparatory training you need to do to get up to speed on this client, on this industry, on this project, etc.
Okay. Okay. So those are great examples of learning strategies and learning challenges solved. Could you give an example? And I think you write about a few of these cases in your book about a particular organization and a business problem, like an outcome that they've solved for.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there actually can be lots. But let's say you're a company that wants to expand into a new market or into a new product
Hmm.
line or
Hmm.
a new geographic region, but your expansion is dependent in part on workforce capability that you don't have in large enough supply,
Yeah.
right? So you very quickly have to identify the skills you need to source either from the marketplace or build internally, build, buy, borrow, bot, badge, rebadging internal employees, whatever the set
Yeah.
of strategies you are to try to
Yeah.
close that capability gap. So it can be a driver of like speed to market or market capture if you are able to execute on that more quickly than other people. If you think about like a professional service firm or a technology
Hmm.
firm,
Hmm.
um, the ability to find the right internal resources quickly and quickly get them billable,
Yeah.
that can have a very real top line impact on revenue capture. Like if I could save 10% of the time it takes to take someone off of non-billable and get them onto useful billable work, and it's the right person, that can drive revenue capture. That's very real.
Yeah.
By the same token, those same kinds of firms, because these systems can usually are more flexible in integrating changes to curriculum or additions to curriculum, they're more adaptable and keeping pace with rapid changes of new learning needs. Like, so if you think about technology and constantly the churn that happens with, you know, new lessons that we're learning about, let's say things like AI, trying to keep pace with all of the new learning on AI, these systems can change their curriculums much more quickly. It's historically it can take several months sometimes, to change a whole curriculum,
Right.
but these can do it in much more rapid pace. Um, um,
Those
the
are great.
idea
Yeah.
the idea that being able to look up different jobs can enable career mobility, which can
Yep.
in some organizations can be a big thing to sort of reducing attrition, keeping
Right.
people in-house who otherwise might, leave for other opportunities, but they're able to see more interesting opportunities internally, and so you keep all of that knowledge in-house. So that,
Yeah.
there can be a lot of different business cases that these things can perform. I sort of like to think the problem has always been not that learning designers don't know how to create high quality learning experiences. They do. The challenge has
Hmm.
always been logistics. Our
Yes.
traditional courses
Yes.
take a little time to develop, and sometimes they're too generic, or the really great programs have trouble scaling to large audiences. And this addresses a lot of those challenges in terms of trying to find ways to make the curriculum and its organization more flexible, more targeted, more efficiently delivered.
Yeah, yeah. Perfect, perfect. So business case is clear, and you've kind of taken us to the next topic around execution. So, you've worked with a lot of organizations, and which is great fodder for your book and your blogs. You've seen people go through challenges. So, what are the common traps that you see organizations fall into when they're executing skills-based strategies?
Yeah, and so let me start with some of the most common journeys because this is a
Yep.
journey that you can start in a number of different places. Um, Implementing a talent marketplace is a pretty common place that people start their skills journey.
Okay.
Um, Tying skills to a job architecture is another common starting point for a skills journey. Some companies like to start with building a skills taxonomy first, and then
Hmm.
uh, tying it to different parts of the organization, next. Um, some places are using this hand in hand with AI in terms of uh, it's sort of the twin pillars of human-centered work design, right? So they're going through the work processes, figuring out what humans do, figuring out what AI can do.
Okay.
And then the skills piece is sort of underscoring both elements, the skill of the AI bots and the skill of the people. And it's
Hmm.
help trying to support both pieces in different
Hmm.
ways. Um, so there can be a lot of different ways that people start a journey. Talent scarcity is a big one for a lot of companies. Like they use it heavily on the recruiting side to do skills-based recruiting, drop the degree requirements, trying to expand the audience that they can recruit from if they have like massive scarcity of certain kinds of skills, and those skills can be taught
Okay.
or developed, Um, so the traps, I would say, probably the most consistent trap I see is starting without a business strategy,
Okay.
right? Is sort of a technology first. We'll buy a piece of technology, we'll implement it, it'll solve all our problems kind of
Hmm.
approach,
Hmm.
which, is not really new in the world of business. Every function in the company has made that mistake once or twice.
Sure.
Um, where, like we've heard about this transformative new piece of technology and we buy it first, and then as we're implementing it, we start to figure out what it's actually good at doing for us from a business perspective, and then we take a step back and we sort of change our process to have a business driven, functional requirements driven sort of focus.
Right.
It's the same thing with this, right? Like I would start with a business strategy, right? Determine your use cases up front, determine your functional requirements, have a real strategy for how far you want to push skills, where, what your starting point is going to be, how far you want to push it, in what areas of the company can it provide the most value, step one, step two, right? I think that's one of the big traps. I think one of the second biggest traps is, which is sometimes related, is just sort of some companies start. It's not that you can't do it this way, but it can be very painful to start with building the taxonomy first,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially if it's not tied to a specific business problem it's trying to help.
Right.
If it starts as a sort of general data housekeeping task, right? Let's
Yeah.
collect all our skills across all our HR systems, put them in a
Yeah.
box and organize them, but I don't know why I'm organizing them very clearly. I don't know what business problem I'm trying to solve with it. It
Right.
can be difficult to do that in the abstract. It provides a
Yeah.
lot of focus and a lot of value if you've actually talked to your business areas and you're like, okay, here's a business line. Let's just do a portion of the skills taxonomy, the one that's related to our large client business area or our small client business area or our high volume product line or some part of the company. let's build out those skills for them, provides a ton of focus to the exercise so that when you kick
Hmm.
the tires and you're piloting it, you figure out what you need to, but you know how to break conceptual ties
Right,
because you're like, in a way that helps this business unit. And then
right,
it's easier to do that separately and then
right.
connect separate taxonomies so that they can communicate than it is to do one giant
Well,
exercise in the abstract.
yeah, the boil the ocean strategy.
Yeah, yeah, the boilie oat, that's exactly right. Right. So
Yeah.
we're a big fan of having a specific business case to target it around as an early pilot.
Yeah, because I can imagine it could be a big lift, if you're going across an enterprise with a taxonomy and all the job architectures, all the job families, all the people, versus piloting with a particular business unit. So Craig, how you've mentioned this a little bit with AI, and that was fascinating, that you're seeing that use case around work design as a driver here. How is, just if you could broaden the conversation around Gen AI, how do you see Gen AI changing how organizations need to think about their skill strategies?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably maybe two or three things that come to mind quickly. So the first thing to realize is all of this skills tech that is driving this, and you asked the question, why now?
Yeah,
The question why now is for the last 30 years, most of our HR data has sort of topped out at the person level. You know, like we
yeah,
hire a person, we give them a job title and benefits, we stick them someplace on the org chart, they sit there for a few years until they advance or move. Um, that was hard enough to stay on top of with all the
yeah,
transfers and comings and goings and leaves of absence and such. The thought of multiplying that times 10 or 20 skills per person was just impossible from a data management perspective.
yeah,
But with AI and modern data analytics tools, it's actually possible now, right? All these technologies like talent marketplaces and the skills taxonomy tech and the applicant tracking systems and the talent intelligence systems, all of which are built on top of skills, um, they're all driven by AI. So
yeah,
it's all possible because AI is what's driving underneath the surface and making this possible. And in particular, the ability of AI to manage unstructured data, which is
hmm,
what's really
hmm,
making it possible. So that's one thing. The
right,
second thing I would say is um, Gen AI and particularly large language models will have a big impact on learning groups. It'll have a big impact it'll make traditional content development easier, uh, perhaps even obsolete over time. Um, so that'll give each learning organization a set of strategic questions that they have to choose is what do I want to do with this extra capacity,
yeah,
right? Am I just going to use it to downsize my learning teams? And am I going to start replacing my traditional content offerings with simulations or digital coaches or learning in the flow of work or developmental gigs or some combination of all of the above? Right? Is it going to be sufficiently easy that I could actually turn over development directly to my subject matter experts on the front line, and my learning
hmm,
team will now have some sort of advisor slash moderator kinds of role? There's lots of choices. Every company will have
yeah,
to sort out how they personally want to respond strategically to this excess capacity, but
yeah,
that'll definitely make a difference. And the third one will be this agentic AI piece. I think really clever learning teams will find ways to leverage agentic AI to handle all kinds of complex logistical tasks like
yeah,
scheduling, registrations, test writing, attendance tracking, compliance tracking, course material archiving, answering routine inquiries from participants. Like a lot of that can get automated with the new agentic AI as learning teams start to use it, and that'll free up a lot of capacity as well.
yeah, yeah. Fascinating. So if you're a chief learning officer or you're sitting across the desk from a chief learning officer, one of your clients, you do this all the time. What is your advice about how they should get started with their skills strategy? How do you simplify it for them? What do you guide them towards, if this is something that they want to explore?
Yeah, I mean, definitely start with a strategy, right? A business-driven strategy. And in the book,
Yep.
we talk about sort of the steps of creating a vision for, where ultimately you want to get the organization to, diagnosing current gaps between where we are today and that vision, creating a journey roadmap, right? A phased implementation roadmap, if you will, of steps to get there. Doing that in collaboration with identifying specific business use cases.
Hmm.
Ideally, if you could find a piece of the organization that can find immediate value out of a skills-based solution in terms of achieving their business KPIs, like we were
Yeah.
talking about growth or revenue capture or operational efficiencies, right? Start there, um, build some momentum with some immediate value, solve a portion of the problem for the organization, and then sort of think about a set of steps to connect the next business challenge and the next one and start creating your enterprise solution over time. Um, um, and then, obviously, in order to do that, you're going to need some change management and some governance over the different moving parts to keep all the different moving parts aligned over time and make sure all the stakeholders are on board.
Yeah.
So that's what we walk through in the book as sort of a, you know, try to figure out your own starting point, your own unique journey, and the steps you sort of need to get them over time. And so that way you have real clarity, like over a multi-year time frame, as to why we're doing each step, right? It's not
Yeah.
just a, hey, let's try this and see where it leads us,
Right.
right? It's like we actually have a real specific set
The
of,
plan.
yeah, of challenges we're trying to tackle in a particular order for, and a reason that we're doing it in that order.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things about the, skills-based strategies that's interesting is there's so much you could do with it across the human capital domains. It's not just learning, of course. And sometimes, learning leaders, they may or may not be strong with data. They're going to need partners for that reason, but also because this is a human capital strategy that's not necessarily learning specific. So, what have you seen work well in terms of learning leaders building relationships with their peers to either say team up for a business case with other human capital leaders or build their relationships with IT? What's your advice to them, sort of the brass tacks in terms of the coalition building or relationship building? Maybe it's building the business case, or maybe it's on the execution side. What have you seen there, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would recommend, whether you're doing it internally or you're getting external help, is just some sort of like a consultative mindset, if you will. Like reach out
Yeah,
to these business partners and do some strategic listening
yeah.
around what are you trying to achieve? What are the
Hmm.
business KPIs that are driving you over the next 12 to 18 months and then, beyond that?
Yep.
And which of those objectives are heavily dependent on having uh, ready access to the right skills in the right quantities at the right time, and none of that exists today,
Right.
right? So that I can start thinking of, okay, so if I could solve that capability problem for you, would that be a big leg up in your ability to achieve your KPIs, right? And if you
Hmm.
start to get a
Hmm.
sequence of yeses, right, you're starting to build a governance group,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You've
Right.
got a
Right.
group of people who can help guide, and some of these will be talent partners, right, who have talent objectives, and some of them would be, you know, forward-facing business operating areas. But now you're starting to sort of build the council of people who have a vested interest in these solutions working. Um, uh, and probably the next step, and we talk about this in the book a little bit, is as you start developing the roadmap, there's also probably going to be some federation of responsibilities.
Hmm.
You're probably not going to have one team that's going to own skills for the entire
Yep.
organization, right? At
Yep.
some point, I mean, you will need to coordinate it centrally, but at some point, you're like, the folks in talent don't understand the engineering skills,
Right.
right? Or some of the technical skills. So it's going to have to be owned by someone who's close enough to those skills to know which ones are current and which ones are, sort of being phased out or retired, and how are they evolving over time. So there's going to be some natural sense of sort of federated governance. It could be more structural, it could be at the sort of subject matter expertise level, but in some ways different groups are going to have some responsibility over sections of the taxonomy and its maintenance and its use, right? And
Yep.
so you start to create a sort of federated governance that starts to build skin in the game for your stakeholders. They're not just sort of listening in on committee meetings once a month, right?
Right.
And having the
Right.
opportunity to opine about it, right? They actually have a
Yeah.
meaningful task
Role.
in
Yeah.
owning the skills that are driving their area of the business, right?
Yep. Yep.
And they have a real ability to be contributing to, okay, how am I getting what I need, but also contributing to a common language and enterprise capacity for, reporting across business units and such. And it's that kind of approach, which,
Yeah.
it's in
Yeah.
some ways it's change management basics, but
Hmm.
it's always challenging to execute, those kinds of things in reality. But that's what I would say, right? Is reach out to people, meet them where they are, try to help them achieve their
Yeah.
goals, start building a coalition of the willing to
Yeah.
sort of guide this and drive it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, it helps you get started, and it also like I love what you're saying about it builds that foundation for your governance group over time. You're identifying partners in the short and long term. So that's excellent. So we talked about how transformative AI has been. And I know some of these systems are not have been around longer than generative AI, of course. But if we're seeing things just like hypercharge and capabilities are unlocked today that really literally didn't exist a few years ago. So with knowing how fast things are changing, I realize that this may be hard to answer, but if we were having this conversation 2, 3 years from now, Craig, how do you think skilling strategies and adoption will have changed? What do you imagine might be some of the vectors of change that will have occurred?
Yeah, I mean, I think today you've got a lot of organizations that are sort of uh, moving from skills curious to skills ready,
Hmm.
right? There's a lot of testing, there's a lot of learning, figuring out strategy, piloting in a small place kinds of things, right? So you're sort of in the
Okay.
early phases of the maturity of um, the whole area. I'd like to think in 2 or 3 years, um, first of all, people will have had a couple, 3 years of playing around with skills to really start having informed opinions
Yeah.
about how it can best be applied, where it can best be leveraged, and where it absolutely can't be avoided, right?
Yep.
So that we start moving away from, skills ready and moving into skills optimization,
Okay.
right? How are we really, fine tuning this solution for the enterprise, and where are we going to leverage it, and where, maybe we're not going to invest as heavily because it has less value for us.
Right.
I think the other piece that's going to have a big impact is AI, because we're kind of skills and AI are sort of in a parallel and interrelated set of maturity, right? We're
Hmm.
also
Hmm.
experimenting with AI. Most companies know that it's important and they have to figure out a way to use it, but there's still a lot of experimentation going on with how best to leverage it and apply it. So you've got that same sort of AI curious to AI ready kind of part of the journey. Um, and sort of similarly, I think we're going to start seeing much more tangible solutions over the next couple of years where people will find their footing about what their whole strategy and approach is for AI. They figured out where they're getting the most value out of it today and a real solid picture for tomorrow. And as AI starts moving into AI optimization, that's ultimately going to impact skills as well, right? Because you have this idea of, as I was talking about before, this like the human-centered design or the AI enablement of work will change ways of working.
Hmm.
Um, from a business standpoint, the business will be accomplishing similar tasks, but the details of how those tasks are accomplished
Yes.
will
Hmm.
change, and therefore the skills that people will need to, like, for example, there may be some tasks that you do today sort of manually with Excel or other computer systems that you just type into a computer with a prompt, or even speak
Hmm.
into a computer with a prompt,
Hmm.
Star Trek style, like,
Hmm.
computer, blah 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 blah, make a table for me that describes this, right? And so you're gonna have to get good at the prompts,
Right.
and troubleshooting the prompts and exactly what information you give to the prompts, and then trying to troubleshoot the hallucinations that come out of it. So new skills for accomplishing the old task in a new way, right? That's obviously going to have an impact on the skills taxonomy,
Hmm.
and all of the
Hmm.
training and development that's related to that, and how you're building those skills and finding them in the marketplace and moving them throughout the organization. So I
Yeah.
think you've got both of those elements going on simultaneously.
Yeah, fascinating how these are in parallel, and these two trends of AI and skills and impacting one another and developing and influencing one another. This has been fantastic, Craig, and I've learned so much. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and insights on all things skills related. Really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
So, and Craig, let me ask you, if our audience is interested in learning more about you, about your book, about your work at St. Charles Consulting, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach out to me through the St. Charles website. That's www.stccg.com, or you can email me at cfriedman@stccg.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, all the normal socials. And um, if you're interested in the book, it's Enterprise Skills Unlocked, and it's on Amazon. You can go, and take a look at it right now. We've got a audio version and an ebook version. So if you're curious, you can learn more there.
I can attest to it. I would reach over and grab my Kindle and show it, but it's just slightly out of arm's reach here. So yes, it's on my Kindle, and I recommend it. It's a great place to start for our audience. So to our audience, if you enjoyed today's episode, you can follow or subscribe to Being Intrepid wherever you get your podcasts. And that's a wrap. So until next time, keep asking the hard questions, chart your own course, and keep on learning. Thank you.